Your Turn to Die, or Kimi ga Shine in the original Japanese, is a horror game that was released episodically, half a chapter at a time, beginning in 2017, with the most recent update coming out in February of 2020, specifically the first half of Act 1 of the third chapter. Work was interrupted on the series for the creator Nankidai's health issues, on top of possibly because of the world ending last year. The game is entirely free to play, both in the original Japanese and the translated version by VG Person, both of which are linked in the description below. So feel free to stop this video and go play it if you want, but make sure to read the trigger warning, of which there are several. But on top of the emotional risk, there are a few moments in the title where the screen will flash white during some of the mini-games, so if you have epilepsy or other vision problems, just keep an eye out for those and try to stay in well-lit areas. I don't think they're nearly as intense as, say, Balan Wonderworld or Cyberpunk 2077's issues, but, it's better to be safer than sorry, right? Your Turn to Die is a horror game, think Danganronpa. The protagonist is Sarah, who is trapped in one of these death games with her friend Joe and 9 other people, who are forced to complete tasks, but the main draw that sets this apart from other death games is that each round, or chapter in this case, ends with what's called a majority vote, where the group has to vote on who to kill off. There's a lot of twists and turns, with you being unsure of who to trust, and the rug getting swept out from under you so many times, on top of the stress of knowing, you specifically, if indirectly, you will have to kill off one of the people you've been working with. But there's so much going on that I'm not even sure if I can use footage of it without A, getting demonetized because of the horror, and B, just spoiling something by mistake. So I'm just going to stick to screenshots and concept art for this video. Despite how long this game has been a thing, I only heard about it recently, and when I actually sat down to play it, I really was hooked. It's really difficult to put down, especially with each half chapter introducing a new mechanic that's baked into the story on top of the existing puzzles, and how it even turns dialogue into a combat system all its own, which is a very interesting way of incorporating action elements into a passive experience, and something that other RPGs have struggled with for quite some time. The designs are anime inspired, but difficult to call anime due to how unique and vibrant they are. The characters are surprisingly complex, with more sides being revealed to them as time goes on, including the protagonist Saro, who I believe is a very good representation of how protagonists for visual novels and JRPGs and other experiences with either a silent or quiet protagonist should be handled, as she is a deconstruction of how odd it is for a teen to assume command of a group of kids and adults. And while you find out as time goes on that it's a mix of charisma and her kindness, but unlike those other examples, she's nowhere near perfect and is just as shaken by what happens by the people around her, and it makes her, even though she's the protagonist, really compelling in her own right. The music is also spot on. Really, my only complaint is that all of the tracks are made to loop, and thus most are less than a minute long. That's not a knock on the game, of course, but it just makes it difficult to listen to the soundtrack outside of it. Oh, and the soundtrack itself has also been made freely available to the public, so you can check that out in the link below as well. The visuals are also nice, with a mix of standard visual novel backdrops and Earthbound/Undertale style environments and character models. Speaking of Undertale though, the story also uses changes in the mechanics and backdrops to highlight certain story beats, which makes things even more gripping. Seriously, the story is really haunting, and there are moments I assure you you'll be too stunned or too scared to act for fear of hurting or getting someone killed, if you have any sort of heart. The only 2 gripes I have with Your Turn to Die is that the browser version started to lag in the second half of Chapter 1, but once I switched to the download version everything ran smoothly. I also hit a dead end in an early puzzle in Chapter 3 where I saved halfway through it and thus ran out of time to complete the puzzle, even though I figured out the solution. So I had to restart the chapter to get back to that point, so just be sure to keep multiple save backups. If the developer or the translator are able to patch the game though, an ability to retry one of these puzzles if you failed them instead of throwing you all the way back to the title screen would be greatly appreciated. So yeah, I want to keep this brief, but the bottom line is that Your Turn to Die is a stellar experience from start to end. The original developer Nankidai seems to be on the cusp of announcing the next part soon, or already has depending on when this video goes up, because their live stream is currently scheduled for May the 2nd. So hopefully we'll get out of this hiatus and we'll get to experience the rest of this great story soon too. Thank you again for watching, everyone. As always, please consider helping the channel out by liking, sharing, subscribing and all that good stuff. And maybe even donate to my Patreon and or my Ko-fi too. Thanks in advance all, and as always, have a great day.